All right, CBS News has noticed that kids today are fat. And I think we've all probably noted that. And they found the culprit. It's not what you think. Or maybe it is, if you think just like these people. God pity you. Let's listen.
There's a new study showing how climate change, specifically higher temperatures, is making our children more inactive and more obese. The study published in journal Temperature found today's children are 30% less aerobically fit than their parents were at their age. Fewer children are reaching the World Health Organization's recommendation of 60 minutes of exercise a day. Now, listen, it has been a lot hotter, and the weather has been crazy. But I think it also has to do with technology, you know?
Yeah.
It's one thing not to go outside, but these kids don't go outside because they can stay inside and be on their phones, play video games, and be social without having to go outside and be social.
Okay, well, it's not a lot hotter, first of all. According to the government's own climate change website, climate.gov, you can go there. Temperatures have risen 2 degrees Fahrenheit since pre-industrial times. So that's if we're going with their data and we're just going to accept it on face value, then 2 degrees in 150 years. According to this information, we're about a half a degree hotter, maybe, than we were when I was a kid in the 90s. And this counts as a lot hotter. It explains why kids don't go outside. Turn the temperature down by half a degree and it changes, or turn it up rather by half a degree, and it changes everything? Really? But what about the seasons? So every time these people talk about climate change, they just ignore the concept of seasons. I mean, the temperature does drop by a lot more than half a degree for kids today because it's not summer temperatures all year long unless you live on the equator. So do kids suddenly go outside and play in the fall, in the spring? In the winter, in the early summer? No, they don't. Also, by the way, you can look at obesity rates by state, and there is no correlation between average temperature and obesity. West Virginia is one of the fattest states, but it's got a mean annual temperature of 56 degrees. West Virginia, but it's a beautiful. The temperature is, at least for my taste, the temperature is almost always great. It's a beautiful place, a beautiful state to go and run around outside. And yet, it's the second fattest state in the country. Florida is, on average, 20 degrees or more hotter, and yet it's one of the skinniest states. And this becomes even more, this lack of correlation becomes even more apparent when you look at it on a global scale. Okay, because there are a great many very hot, tropical, climates where people are not only not obese, but oftentimes famished, starving. Their ribs are poking out of their bodies. And why is that? Well, because this is about food. Okay, obesity is about food. It's about the foods you put in your body. It's how many calories you put in your body versus how many you burn. That's where obesity comes from. That's it. That is the whole story of obesity. If you are obese, it is because you are taking in a lot more calories than you're burning. End of discussion. Regardless of what the administration defines as a recession, Americans are certainly worried. Food and gas prices are higher than I've ever seen them in my lifetime, which is why I'm so grateful for my favorite meat delivery service, Good Ranchers. Good Ranchers offers a recession-proof subscription model that lets you lock in your price the day you subscribe. Imagine if car companies did this. Like, what if you could have bought your 2020 Ford at 1990s pricing? That's what Good Ranchers does for its customers. Not only that, but Good Ranchers is also currently running a back-to-school give-back program with the goal of donating 100,000 high-quality meals this month to children in need. So go to goodranchers.com/Walsh, use code Walsh at checkout. They'll get $30 off plus free shipping. You can subscribe to lock in your price and recession-proof your meals for life. And you can help these guys reach their goal of donating 100,000 meals to children who may need it going into the fall semester. That's goodranchers.com/Walsh and use code Walsh at checkout. And that's why in third world countries, they don't seem to have the fat gene, surprisingly. Why is that? Because they're not eating enough. And if you don't eat enough, then instead of being overweight, you're going to be very much underweight. So why are kids fat? It is an important question. It is something we should be talking about. But they're fat because they're eating garbage food and they're sitting around on their phones all day. We hear the CBS guy at the end, he makes mention of that. Well, I think it has something to do with technology too. No, it's not just something to do with technology. That's the whole, that along with the food, that's the whole story. 50% and 50% right there. The food is bad and kids are sitting around on their phones all day. Doesn't matter how beautiful the temperature is outside. And it's even worse, this is beyond, we've gone way beyond mere laziness or anything like that. Many kids today no longer have just the innate desire to go run around outside. Okay, and that should be innate. Now, I know for my own kids, we don't give them phones, we don't do technology, we have a TV, we don't let them watch it that much though. And my kids can certainly be lazy, don't get me wrong about that. But they still have this youthful, natural energy where they want to be outside. I mean, I hear all that, well, it's too hot for kids to go outside. We live in Tennessee. It's like 6,000 degrees here all the time with a humidity of 6,000%. And my kids will go run around outside. We have to tell them to come in so they don't get heat exhaustion. And that's normal for kids. That doesn't make my kids special, quite the opposite. It just makes them normal kids. But for a lot of kids, they've become so numb, so sort of dead to the world, that they don't even have the desire to run outside and explore and go into the woods and just whatever kids do. You know, we all tell the stories about when we were kids and you go out and, you go out at 7 o'clock in the morning, you come back, you wouldn't be back until dinner. Well, that's not just a get off my lawn, back in my day kind of rant. It is an observation about a wide, sweeping social change that has happened in this culture, and it is a horrible change. I mean, we still really cannot conceive of what this is going to be like in the future. To have a generation of kids raised on this stuff, raised on screens, utterly dependent on them from toddler on. What does that look like? What kind of world are we living in 40 years, 50 years? I mean, certainly it's going to be a fat world, even fatter than it is now. But in a lot of ways, that's like the least of our problems. Well, before you go, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. And while you're at it, if you want to go watch or listen to my full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe. You can also catch my show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So go check it out now. I demand it. Your compliance is somewhat appreciated.